Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Asatara Satashi Śrīmad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Mathura Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Gangamaya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya. Krishna Prastaya Bhutale. Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane. Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatyade Satarane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajivam. Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Vanchakalpajubhyascha Kipasindhavyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's May 29th, 2025 at Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. Can we move that up so we can see all? It's 6 slides. We're reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 10, last verse, text 30. Yes, we said May 29th, 2025. Yes, okay. Excellent. Ata param pravakshami vamshaman vantaranti cha evam raja plutashasta kalpadishvatmabirhari Srajatyamoga Sankalpa Atmaivatmanam Atmana. Okay, before we look at, don't scroll down yet. Anyone have some idea what Amoga Sankalpa means? A spotless vow? That would be a very good translation. Any other ideas? What other way could we translate this? What is a sankalpa? Of determination, a vow, what else? Intention. Okay, and amoga? Spotless, yes, what else? Pure, what else? Without any faults, okay, yeah? Sincere, okay. Also means something that is definitely going to happen. Okay, so an amoga sankalpa is a determination, a desire that will definitely happen. And then you can see in the last line, how many times does it say atma? 3 times. Okay, let's go to the word for word. Ataha, here, param, after, pravakshyami, I shall explain, vamshan, descendants, manvatarani, different advents of manus, cha, and, evam, thus, rajaha plutha, infused with the modes of passion, shasta, the creator, kalpa adishu, in different millenniums, atma bhu, self-advent, harihi, the personality of Godhead, Shrujati, creates, amoga, unfailing, sankalpa, determination, atma eva, he himself, atmanam, himself, atmana, by his own energy. Srila Prabhupada's translation. Now I shall describe the descendants of the Manus, the creator Brahma as the incarnation of the passion mode of the personality of Godhead, creates the universal affairs with unfailing desires in every millennium by the force of the Lord's energy. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The cosmic manifestation is an expansion of one of the many energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creator and the created are both emanations of the same supreme truth. As stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Janma Yasya Yataha, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1:1:1. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 10th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Divisions of the Creation. So this one point, the creator and the created are both emanations of the same supreme truth we will talk about tomorrow. Another way to understand this verse, another way one could translate this, is that Maitreya, in the context of the verses before and after it, is that Maitreya is explaining that these different categories of living beings engineered sequentially by Brahma manifest asynchronistically in different periods of time under the direction of the ambitious creator Brahma, who is empowered by Hari, whose decisions are flawless and whose existence and power has no origin besides himself. So our acharyas explain that in this verse, this atmaivatmanam atmana means that the Lord is creating through Brahma by his own energy, in which all of his desires are fulfilled. So I think amoga sankalpa is something we would all like to have. Yes? Would everyone like to have amoga sankalpa? Would you like to have all your desires fulfilled? And we would also like to know what to desire, right? So we'd like to know those two things. What we should desire, and then have all of our desires be fulfilled. But we don't know either of those. We don't know what to desire, and we don't know how to make our desires be fulfilled. So many times devotees ask, we just got a question like this last night, it's a question we get a lot. Someday I'll do an analysis of the most, at the FAQ of the Hare Krishna movement, And one of them is, how do I know what Krishna wants? That's a very top question. And how do I know when I want something, if it's what I want or what Krishna wants? Am I correct? This is one of the top questions? Yes. So the pure devotees ask this question because their only desire is to make Krishna happy. Their happiness is in making Krishna happy. And the not pure devotees ask this question because they think this way they'll be able to figure out how they can be happy in the world. You follow? If I can just figure out what Krishna wants, and I do that, then I'll be in alignment and I'll be happy. So the first thing, again, is that we don't know what to desire and how to achieve it. That's our first problem. And the answer to that is in this verse with Lord Brahma, whose desires are aligned with that of the Lord. And therefore, one can say not only that the Lord has Amoga Sankalpa, but also Brahma has Amoga Sankalpa, because the Lord is manifesting his desires through Brahma. So that is the stage that we are aiming toward. And then finally, we're going to look at how to get there. So our problem, we don't know what to desire, and we can't figure out how to achieve our desires. So why don't we know what to desire? Well, because our desires are based on sense gratification. And if we look at Bhagavatam 3:26-27, we have this word sankalpa again. Sankalpa vikalpa bhyam vartate kama sambhavaha, which Prabhupada translates as, from the false ego of goodness, another transformation take place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. And in Prabhupada's purport, he says the symptoms of the mind are determination and rejection, accepting and rejecting, which are due to different kinds of desires. We desire that which is favorable to our sense gratification, and we reject that which is not favorable to our sense gratification. So the way things are supposed to work, the way that Krishna has designed the body, mind, intelligence, is that our intelligence should have a clear sankalpa coming from the soul, as directed by Guru and Krishna and Shastra. And the intelligence makes this goal. For those of you who attended my seminar on japa, what voice is that? Any of you remember? What's the voice of the intelligence? It's pasyantivak, the voice of vision, of desire. Just like, these New Age people, they make a vision board, right? I'm sure you've all heard of that. But that vision board is not generally, maybe sometimes, but not generally coming from their intelligence, guided by the soul, the super soul, and Guru. And this vision of intelligence, pasyantivak, is supposed to guide the mind. Does anyone know the Sanskrit name of the voice of the mind? Madhyamavak, the middle voice. And then that is supposed to guide the senses. So that's the way the system is supposed to work. Right? Guru, Krishna, Shastra, all is guiding the soul that gives the vision that gives the intelligence a vision, and according to this vision, the mind accepts or rejects and guides the senses. Let's think of a completely mundane example. So suppose somebody has a vision, I want to become a medical doctor. And then if their mind is guided by that vision, they'll say, I'm not going to go party with my friends, I'm going to study for my exam. It will accept studying and reject partying. And then the person will sit down, and with their senses, they will study and not go to the party. That's how it's supposed to work. But as is explained here in 3:26-27, what often works is the mind, which is meant to be a servant. The mind is actually quite passive. The mind is a manifestation of sattva gun. Its natural state is actually to be quiet. So if instead the senses are guiding the mind, then we have havoc. That's actually animal life. So, the animals smell something or see something that's suitable for their sense enjoyment and says, this is suitable, and the mind says, okay, accept it. And the senses say, this is unsuitable, and the mind says, reject it. And the intelligence is like practically just kind of watching this whole thing. Right? That painting, right? where the horses are out of control. The horses are the senses, and they're just driving. The mind is the reins. They're just pulling on the reins. And the poor intelligence is just pulled here and there and everywhere. And of course, Krishna talks about this in Bhagavad Gita 2:62-63, what we call the fall-down sequence. That, I hear, see, smell, taste, touch something, or I think about hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching something, and from that I think, I must have this, or aversion, I don't want to have this. That's also, do you follow? That's just as strong. You smell something and you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Right? You see something, I don't want to do this. So attachment and aversion, and then the mind is just the servant of the senses. So one problem with our desires is if they're sensory-based, like an animal. So why is that a problem? That seems like it would be a good thing. We'll accept what's pleasing to our senses. We'll reject what's not pleasing to our senses. What's wrong with that? Any thoughts? What's wrong with that? You'll go to hell. Yes, quite quickly, actually. Yes. What else is wrong with that? Yeah? Yes, we have a real devotee here. We're supposed to please Krishna's senses. Yes? Our senses don't know what's best for us, which is why we're going to go to hell. Right? We'll just eat anything that tastes. The food scientists, they're engineering artificial food that will incite our senses to eat more. You're all aware of this? They actually study. There's a certain combination of salt, sugar, fat, and crunch. And if you get it in just the right combination, we will have difficulty not eating. We'll eat one, and we'll eat another, 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 and pretty soon we can't get out of our door, right? And we've got diabetes and heart disease and so many things because our senses are dictating eat more. And the modern media, they've studied what makes people pay attention. So we're biologically engineered to pay attention to sudden movements because they might indicate danger. It might be a snake, it might be a tiger, right? So any sudden movement attracts our attention. So what the media has done is it moves constantly. So when I was a kid, the camera angle would change every minute to half a minute. Now they're changing it every 5 to 10 seconds. I mean, even if they're just focusing on two people talking, it'll be doop, 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 doop. They'll have a variety of cameras, and they switch back and forth. So what would normally be very boring to us, our senses are tricked into thinking that this is interesting. And therefore, people will watch things that they're not even really interested in watching. Am I correct? People will eat things they're really not that interested in eating. They'll watch things they're not that interested in watching because their senses are saying, this is something interesting. Yes. And then afterwards, we'll just lament. Mm-hmm. So this is a problem if our desires are based on the senses. Another problem is if we're being impelled by Rajagun and Tamagun. So what does Krishna say about Tamagun? He says, in Tamagun, you think what you should do is what you should not do, and what you should not do is what you should do. You have it all backwards. And we see people in Tamagun are like this. They think that what's good for them is bad for them, and what's bad for them is good for them. Krishna says they're always going in the wrong direction. So if we're in Tamagun, our desires are completely contrary to our self-interest. Then if we're in Rajagun, we sometimes get it right, sometimes get it wrong. Like sometimes we'll make good decisions and sometimes we'll make bad decisions. And we can look judged by the result. So if our decisions are mostly turning out wrong, we're probably in Tamagun. And if our decisions are like half right, half wrong, we're probably very much in Rajagun. So that's another problem. We're influenced by the modes and we don't even know that we're influenced by the modes. We think it's my decision, whereas it's just Rajas and Tamas pushing us. So because we don't know what to desire, even when we get what we desire, we lament. As I was saying, a person would go, well, why did I spend so many hours watching that stupid show I don't even care about? Or why did I sit around eating all this food and now I just feel bloated and lethargic and, so we're lamenting. And of course, the main example of person who lamented was Dhruva in 4.9.27. And we have twice here the word sankalpa. Sopi sankalpajam Vishnu, padasevo padaditam, praja sankalpa nirvanam, naiti prito bayat puram. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. So was his desire impelled by Rajas and Tamas? Definitely. It was impelled by envy. We talked the other day about envy. He was envious of his stepbrother. He was envious of his stepmother. He was envious of his father. He wanted a kingdom greater than that of his father, greater than that of his grandfather. So he was definitely impelled by Rajas and Tamas. And when he got it, he's like, oh no, why did I get that? I didn't want it. Now, one of the prime examples of somebody whose desire didn't make him happy is, I like to bring this example up a lot because I think it's very relevant, is Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu got externally, ostensibly, what everybody wants. He became the king of the universe without a rival. Only Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva were above him. He owned everything, a lot more than the rich people of this planet like Bezos and Musk. I mean, he really owned everything. And he had no rival. He had all the mystic powers. Right? Wouldn't that be cool if you could just float in the sky? You didn't have to buy a ticket to India. You could just float there, you know. You didn't have to go to the store. Prabhupada said how he met a yogi when Prabhupada was a boy. He met this yogi who just produced a pomegranate. You know, he was asked, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want a pomegranate." "Oh, here it is. Here's your pomegranate." To have all these mystic cities, to read people's minds, to control people's minds, right? We would have liked that when we were a child, right? We want something from our parents, we could just control their mind and they'd have to give us something. So he had all of these things. And he apparently was free from death, apparently could be immortal. But he got all these things and he wasn't happy. How do we know he wasn't happy? There are two symptoms given in the Bhagavatam of why Hiranyakashipu was not happy. Do you know what they were? Angry. He was always angry. And he was always getting angry at whom? Well, he was always angry at Krishna. At the demigods. He was always angry at the demigods. And he was always shouting at them for no reason. Have you ever been around somebody like that? Right? Who's like always they get angry for nothing. Or maybe you've been like that sometimes. Now, if we're like that, we know it's because we have some unhappiness internally, right? Am I correct? If I start snapping at people over insignificant things or nothing, then I know something's wrong with me internally. Something's bothering me. The other thing is he was always intoxicated. If you're happy, you don't get intoxicated. It's a way of escaping what's going on in your life. So he had everything, but he wasn't satisfied. He had asked for the wrong thing. And then there are times when we don't get what we want. We have a desire, so we have times we get what we want and we're still not happy, like Hiranyakashipu or like Dhruva Maharaj. Now, it happens all the time. People work for something and they get it and it's not what they wanted. So we give an example in our Career Dharma book. Actually, it's one devotee who worked to become a lawyer. It takes a long time to become a lawyer. And once she became a lawyer, she said, "I don't like being a lawyer." I had a professor at the university who said when he was 19, so someone visited his school and said, "If you follow this program, you can become a school superintendent by the time you're 33. School superintendent in America, you're in charge of many schools." So he said he followed it like it was scripture. To only teach for 3 years, then do this. He did everything. He became a school superintendent at 33, and he discovered that he hated it. His wife hated it so much she divorced him. And he finally left and went back to teaching. He decided, I love being a teacher. Why did I quit teaching after 3 years to follow this path? So that happens. We work for something, we try to get it, and we're like, right? You ever you order something and it comes in the mail and you look at it and you're like, oh gosh. You know, you marry the man of your dreams and you find out that he leaves his dirty socks all over the floor and, you know. So you get it, and then you're like, "Duh." My dear friends, that is the situation for all of us with this material body. Anybody here look in the mirror and go, perfect? Anybody? Right? Or our life, the circumstances of our life, anybody could say that? All my life circumstances were perfect. So we have this body and this mind because we desired it. We worked for it in other lifetimes. And now that we have it, we're like, oh, my nose is too big, my hair is too this, I'm not the right height, I don't have the right this and that, I wish it was like this. And then we build other desires that get us another body that we, again, are not happy with. And then there's desires we just don't get at all. They're not aligned with our karma. We want something, but we haven't earned the karma to get it. And so we may work for it. Prabhupada will say, if working hard will get you what you want, then all the hard workers would be millionaires. And many times we'll work and work and work for something. A person will try to find a suitable marriage partner for decades and still be unmarried at 50, right? Or they'll try to be rich and they'll work at all these jobs and they can barely pay their bills after decades of working. This is not uncommon. Or a person tries to get healthy and they see dozens of doctors and this kind of doctor and that kind of doctor and fly all over the world for this clinic and that clinic, and they don't get healthy. So we have so many desires that are not fulfilled at all. Yes? And then we also have desires, of course, that are fulfilled perfectly, and then they are temporary. Right? Then we lose them. And so all of these lead us in grief and anger. Why didn't I get what I want? Why did what I want not be what I actually wanted? Or why did I have to lose what I want? So this is because we just don't understand. We don't understand the consequences of our behavior. Like you were saying, we're going to go to hell. When people follow their senses, do they realize that they're going to go to hell? No, they don't realize that. They have some illicit relationship. They don't realize I'm going to be embracing a red-hot form in hell while I'm beaten by the Yamadutas. They cheat, and they don't realize the Yamadutas are going to weave me like, they're going to put me on a loom and weave in me. They're rude to a guest. They don't realize, some bird in hell is going to pluck out their eyes. Even again, in ordinary life, you park in the wrong space and think, oh, I won't get a ticket. And even when we have experience, we know if I overeat, I'll feel lousy. And we'll think, oh, this time I can do it and I won't feel lousy. I'll be able to get away with it this time. Those Lubjamins are I can eat another 5 and I'll be fine. So we don't really understand the consequences of our behavior and the consequences of our desires. In fact, we could say such as the definition of lust. That lust is wanting something so much that you just don't care about what the consequences are. You're blind to the consequences. So what we've just described is the basic situation for conditioned souls in regard to their sankalpas. And it's a pretty miserable situation. So what's the ideal situation? The ideal situation, well, Krishna is Amoga Sankalpa. His desires are always fulfilled. Okay, so let me align myself with the Lord. Prabhupada talks sometimes about something, you will not see it in this country, but you will see it in India. And sometimes a person on a bicycle, they hold on to a truck. You've seen this in India? Yes? You will not see this in London. Guarantee you will not see it in London, but you'll see it in India, right? And then the truck is just pulling them. So we think, well, if I can align myself with Krishna, then I will have Amoga Sankalpa like Krishna has. I want to look at 10:37:12. This verse is actually quite similar to today's verse. Atmanat mashraya puryam mayaya srijje gunam tar idam satya sankalpa srijam asya virasvara. You are the shelter of all souls, and being the supreme controller, you fulfill your desires simply by your will. By your personal creative potency, you manifest in the beginning the modes of material nature. Through your agency, you create, maintain, and then destroy. So this verse is also about how Krishna creates, maintains, and destroys through his own sankalpa, through his own desires. So if our personalities are aligned with the Lord, if we're actually aligned with the Lord's desires, then all of our desires are fulfilled and we have the right desires. So I think all of us understand this concept, at least philosophically, correct? That the reason that I have lousy, stupid, foolish, idiotic desires, and the reason that I feel so much frustration at either not getting my desires fulfilled, getting them fulfilled and they weren't what I wanted, or getting them fulfilled and then having them break or die or leave, is because my desires are not aligned with the Lord. And there's a nice example of Kardama Muni in 323:47. He's called Swam Sarva Salkalpa Vidu, that the powerful Kardama was the knower of everyone's heart, and he could grant whatever one desired. So Kardama could act like the Lord, and granting whatever anyone desired, he could fulfill whatever he desired. I mean, he was actually astonished by his own ability to fulfill his desires. He created a flying city. Prabhupada would say, not like just a 747, but actually a city with parks and gardens and, right? We haven't figured out how to do that in the modern age yet. I'm sure they're working on it. And he looked at it and he's like, wow, how did I do this? Yes? So the Lord is very expert at fulfilling his own desires. And what's fascinating is that the Lord can fulfill his desires without contradicting all of these bad desires of the living entities. So the Lord accommodates the good aligned desires, but he can also accommodate the evil desires. It's not that because the Lord's desires are fulfilled that we're like just machines within the Lord's desire. We say not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord, and that the Lord's controlling everything, but it's not like we're automatons, right? So one story that I really like is from the Mahabharata about Gandhari. So the battle was going really, really badly for Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. 99 of their sons were dead. Their grandsons were killed. They were losing. And instead of surrendering, this is a real problem with materialistic people. Even when it's obvious they should surrender, they don't surrender. So instead of surrendering, Gandhari thought that she was going to use her own power. In today's verse, we're reading about Krishna creates, right? We had 3 Atmas at the end. He's creating by his own power. So he thinks, by my power, I'm going to have an amoga sankalpa. I'm going to have an infallible desire. And Gandhari had married a blind man, and as soon as she heard that he was blind, she voluntarily blinded herself. Now, don't do that unless you have hundreds of servants to take care of everything. Otherwise, you have a blind husband and a blind wife. It actually isn't such a good idea. But she was thinking, this way I won't think myself superior to my husband. So she had voluntarily blinded herself, and because of this, she's called a tapasvini. She's actually a great ascetic. Although a married woman with children, she was actually a great ascetic. So she tells Duryodhana, what does she tell Duryodhana? To undress himself and come before. Yes, to come completely naked. And I don't know why he did this, but he was walking through the camp naked. Like you'd think he'd put on a gumshoe to walk through the camp at least, but he's just like walking through the camp naked. And who does he run into? Krishna. And Krishna's like, what are you doing? If we saw somebody walking through the grounds naked, we'd be like, what are you doing? So Krishna says, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to see my mother. And Krishna's like, well, your mother did see you naked many, many times as a baby. But now that you're an adult man, that's not so appropriate anymore, And Duryodhana's like, oh, yeah. Krishna says, at least, cover your privates. So Duryodhana just takes some leaves and puts it around his covers his private parts. And puts it, but it also covers, if you're going to do that. I guess if you had a cope in with just a string, but he just got some leaves. So he put some leaves around. So this was also covering his upper thighs. So he goes to see Gandhari, and she said, have you come and followed my instructions? And he's like, yes, mother. And he was also thinking, if I put on leaves, then I'm not wearing clothes. Got to be careful when you deal with Krishna with this kind of thing. Right? So then Gandhari takes off her blindfold and looks at him. And her glance, by her sankalpa, by her determination, her glance turned his body into iron. And then she notices he's wearing these leaves. She's like, what are you doing? First Krishna asks him, what are you doing? And now Gandhari's like, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm a grown man now, mother. I'm not in diapers anymore. I didn't think it would be appropriate. And she said, who gave you this advice? And he says, Krishna. And she's like, oh, okay. And of course, this story also brings together that Bhima he had his own sankalpa. When there was the gambling match, and they pulled in Draupadi, when Dusasana pulled in Draupadi by her hair. And then Duryodhana said, you already have 5 husbands. You can have 6, you can have 7, what does it matter? You're already an unchaste woman with 5 husbands. Come sit on my lap. And he slapped his thigh. Sit here on my lap. Be my sex slave, basically. And Bhima got so angry, he said, I swear I will break your thigh with my club. So Bhima had his sankalpa, Gandhari had her sankalpa. And both of them got their desire fulfilled. Gandhari was able to make her son's body as strong as iron by her tapasya. Bhima was able also to break the thighs of Duryodhana because they had been protected. And Krishna's desire to install Maharaj Yudhisthira was also fulfilled. Krishna accommodated the desires of Bhima and the desires of Gandhari and still got everything fulfilled. My kind of visual metaphor for this is if you see a river or a stream or a brook, and it's always going to flow to lower ground, and if there's rocks and different obstacles, the river will flow over them, around them, under them, but it's not dissuaded. And even if there is a big obstacle, there'll be a waterfall. The river doesn't even have to move the rocks. I mean, it will eventually wear them down. But so Krishna is so expert in fulfilling his desires that he can accommodate the billions of desires of the billions of jivas, both the pure jivas who have their desires in service and the impure jivas who are buffeted by rajas and tamas and their senses. And Krishna can accommodate all these, and he can combine all of them, which is just amazing. My karma has to link to your karma. You understand? I'm not getting my karma in isolation. You have some karma, you have some karmic desire that involves me. I have some karmic desire that involves you and some other. And Krishna coordinates that. Anyone here ever coordinated a group of people? Anybody here ever been like a manager, coordinated a group of people? Is that easy? It's not so easy. I mean, I used to teach a individualized school. We'd have 30 kids aged 5 to 18, and they're all doing different things. And when I first tried to do that, when one of my teachers went to India, and she said, Urmila, can you also take over my class? So I was teaching. It was the first time that I did not only multi-level, but individualized. And the 6-year-olds didn't get any handwriting practice for 2 weeks. I just spaced it out completely. She comes back and she says, where's the handwriting practice? I went, oops, forgot about that. So it was very difficult, right? It took quite a lot of practice, and then I had to have a whole complicated system and a grade book where I wrote everything in, and I made notes of everything, because the students would love it if I spaced out on their homework. They wouldn't remind me, oh, I had an assignment due today, And that was just 30 kids. And there are so many billions of living entities. So Krishna is able to do that. So there are those who are partially aligned with the Lord. These are like the demigods. They're driving their own bicycle, but they hitch onto the truck. And they're like, we figured out, which is like what Dhruva figured out by his mother's grace, we figured out that because the Lord is a Moga Samkalpa, if I can connect with him, my desires will also be fulfilled. So this is Sakama devotee. I'm coming to the Lord to fulfill my desires, and the vast majority of religious people are in that category. They figured out that if I try to fulfill my desires by myself, it doesn't usually work. So let me ask the boss. Let me ask the person who controls everything. It was in this temple room years ago, and one young lady comes and puts an envelope on the floor there and starts praying. And I said, "What's in that envelope?" She said, "My exam grades, but I want to pray about it before I open it." And I thought, that's a little late. Do you think that Radha and Nanda are just going to like go into the envelope and change the grades for you or something, So that's often our thing. Krishna, please give me good health, give my Aunt Sally good health, give me a lot of money, give me a beautiful wife or a handsome husband or a rich husband, give me fame, give me whatever. And we don't really care about Krishna. We're really going, like you go into a shop, and you go into a shop and you say, do you have this, do you have this, do you have this, do you have this? Of course, in a shop, we know we have to pay for it. With God, we'll often just try to pay for it with prayers. Imagine going into a shop. You are so talented. You are strong. You are wonderful. Please give me the TV. So often people think like that, or else they may do some austerities to try to get that. But they still have independent desires, actually. And because of this, they'll get into trouble. So the demigods will get into trouble for their independent desires. They're not fully aligned. So when Krishna takes their parijata tree, then they start a battle. Now, those who are perfectly aligned with the Lord may still have their own desires, but those desires are also in alignment. Those desires are in alignment, but they're still their own desires, because pure devotees are not robots. They're not robots. They have their own desires in alignment. And I love some of these pastimes, right, where the Aghasura demon comes, and the cowherd boys are looking at it thinking, what is that? Is it a statue? Is it a demon? Is it a big snake? And they're thinking, well, Krishna likes to be a hero. It's one of the rasas, Vira. He likes to be a hero. And so even if it is a demon, if we go in his mouth, Krishna will be happy because he'll get to play the hero and rescue us. Don't try that. Like, don't walk in a street with your eyes closed so Krishna can be heroic. That's on another level. But anyway, they had those desires. And Krishna did not want the boys to go into the mouth of Aghasura. When they went into Aghasura's mouth, he's like, why did they do that? That was foolish. And then Krishna had to figure it out. Okay, if I just kill the demon, the boys and the calves also are inside, and so they'll also die. Right? If somebody kills us, all of the billions probably of microbes that are living in our body they'll lose their host. You understand? They won't have any food anymore, and they'll also die. All of the cells, there's so many cells in our body, our stomach cells, our bone cells, they'll also die. They won't get any nourishment. So Krishna's thinking, how will I kill Aghasura? And then he's like, okay, he thought of a clever way to do that, which of course gave joy to the cowherd boys. But that was an instance where the cowherd boys had a desire that was different from Krishna's desire. Of course, it did make Krishna happy. Right? And of course, Srila Rupa Goswami gives the example of Mother Yasoda. Krishna didn't want to be tied up. He wanted to steal butter and run around and play. Mother Yasoda had a desire that was different from Krishna's desire. But he then accepted her desire in motherly love. Or with Krishna and Rukmini, where Krishna is saying to Rukmini, I really wasn't the right husband for you. Like, they already had grandchildren. And in those days, people didn't get divorced. It just wasn't a thing, And he was saying, I think you should divorce me. It's not too late. Maybe Shishupal will still marry you. I don't think so. I mean, he wouldn't even marry Amba. I don't think he would have married Rukmini at that point. But Krishna's saying like that. Why don't, Shishupal will probably still have you. And you made a really big mistake marrying me. I'm afraid of the kings. I'm living here in the middle of the ocean. I don't own anything. And what does Rukmini do? She faints. And when Krishna advised her, he said, I didn't want you to faint. I wanted you to argue with me. He says sometimes husband and wife, they have fun having these mock arguments, you know. So this is our relaxation in household life. And once she understood that, then she did do that. Then she did engage in repartee with the Lord. But the point is that her initial reaction was not his desire. But because it was out of love, it was also aligned with the Lord. Or like we could say, Krishna wants to see Radharani, and Prabhupada will say, Lalita will say, I'm sorry, I have no order to let you in today. You can't come in to see Radharani. I have no such order. And Krishna's frustrated, his desire is frustrated. But Krishna's ultimately enjoying these things. Krishna's enjoying saving the cowherd boys. Krishna's enjoying Rukmini so attached to him that she faints. Krishna's enjoying being tied up by his mother. Krishna's enjoying this back and forth with Srimati Radharani with her anger and so forth. But again, it's not that the devotees are just doing immediately what Krishna wants. So how do we get in alignment with Krishna? So Krishna, there's a nice verse Krishna says in 4:19 in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Yasya sarva samaramba kama sankalpa varjita Gyan agni dagdikarmanam tam ahu panditam buddhaha. One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So kama sankalpa varjitaha. Jita means to be victorious. So the kama sankalpa, our desires born from lust, we become victorious over that. Prabhupada writes in 545, purport, a liberated person prepares himself in such a way that he doesn't have to take any material bodies. A further symptom of a liberated person is satya kama, which indicates that all his desires are directed to the supreme truth. He does not want anything else. He is satya sankalpa. Whatever he desires is fulfilled by the grace of Krishna. He does not desire anything for his material benefit, and if he desires anything at all, he simply desires to serve the Lord. That is called Satya Sankalpa. So actually achieving this is the fifth symptom of surrender. The fifth symptom of surrender is described in different ways in different places. And Prabhupada describes it as to feel dependent in some places. And again, different definitions. To feel dependent on the Lord in fulfilling our desires. To have a sense of inability without the help of the Lord. But not like the demigods who are having actually still kama sankalpa, but are going to the Lord for that. So that we should feel ourselves part of the Lord. We're part of the Lord. We're part of the senses. We're part of his body. And we're meant to serve him. That whatever desires I have are meant to serve him. That I will get my desires fulfilled through him. That I want to work in cooperation and in alignment with one interest. With one interest. Which means I can work on either orders or blessings. Sometimes devotees think it has to be only orders, but that's not a fact. If you're running a project, let's say you're organizing a festival, so you may give orders. Okay, can you make sure we have the ingredients for the samosas? Can you buy the decorations? Can you take care of the flowers? But let's say someone comes up to you and says, you know, I have a really good idea for this festival. You know, last year we did this and this and this, but there was this problem. And I'm thinking maybe this year we could organize the serve out line a little different. Why don't we organize it this way? And you go, that's a really good idea, go and do it. Is that also pleasing? Yes? Now, it's pleasing to have people who follow orders. That's pleasing. But even more pleasing is somebody who understands the purpose and can make suggestions. Like Prabhupada says, the first-class servant understands what the master wants even without being ordered. They can anticipate. And it's lovely to have people working with you, under you, whatever, who are also intelligent and thoughtful and who also are focused on the mission and the vision so that they can come up with their own inspirations. Am I correct with that? It's extremely satisfying. Just to have people who follow orders is not nearly as satisfying. So it's completely valid and pleasing to Krishna if we get some inspiration Oh, I can help the Sankirtan movement this way. I can help fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desire. And then we have to get blessings. Like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's in Jagannath Puri, he's like, I want to go to Vrindavan, but he wouldn't go without blessings. And of course, the devotees really gave him a hard time about giving him blessings. Wait for this festival, wait for this festival, wait for this festival. So we go to Guru or the senior Vaishnavas, we pray to the Lord. Like Krishnadas Kaviraj, he wanted to write, and he prayed to the Lord. He gets the garland of the Lord. So everything we do should be on orders or blessings. Right? If we're not willing to get blessings, then probably we have the wrong sankalpa. And then we use the wisdom and intelligence that he gives us. Krishna says, of the wise I am wisdom, of the intelligent I am the intelligence. We know Krishna is my intelligence, Krishna is my wisdom. We're guided by Guru, we're guided by Shastra, we're guided by Krishna. We form our pasyantivark, our vision of our intelligence, our sankalpa, according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And that guides our mind and our senses. And then we're satisfied regardless of the result. Materially, if I get a bad result, I'm miserable. If I don't get what I want, or I got what I wanted and it wasn't what I really wanted, or I got what I wanted, it was what I really wanted and it was temporary, then I'm devastated, right? You got the perfect shoes and then they wore out and the company doesn't make them anymore. And then you're devastated. Right? Or you thought you bought the perfect shoes and then they hurt your feet and you've already spent the money and you've already walked around in them and you can't return them and then you're devastated. Or you search on the internet for 3 months and you still can't find the perfect shoes. We're devastated. But when we're working for Krishna, it's not like that. Whether we get the external result or not, because our working is for Krishna. Therefore, we're happy. If you try to save Sita from Ravana and Ravana cuts off your wings and your talons and you're dying, you're still happy because you work for Ram. And that means that we're dedicating each moment. We're not just focused on the end result. It's not like a materialist, especially in Rajagun. They're just working, suffering to get some fruit. And maybe they enjoy the fruit, maybe they don't, maybe they didn't actually like that kind of fruit once they eat it, or maybe the birds got it or something. And then they work to get a fruit. And all the time they're working, they're miserable. For a moment when they eat the fruit, maybe they're happy if it was the fruit they liked and it was sweet. When I'm working for Krishna, in this moment I'm offering everything to Krishna. In this moment I'm offering everything to Krishna. In this moment I'm offering everything to Krishna. I'm getting the result at every moment. So if the final result ends up the way I want it or not, it's just simply another moment, and I'm not very affected by it. And I should work to please Krishna just because he's so wonderful, and not because I want to get something from him. The only thing that I want to get from him is that he's pleased. And if I can't do that today, if I'm like, that's a really high bar, I can't do that today, all day. Maybe I can do it for 5 minutes. Maybe I can even do it for an hour. But if I can't do it all the time, at least be in Sattva Gun. At least live a life in Sattva Gun. Because in Sattva Gun, we know what is binding, what is liberating, what is to be done, what is not to be done. At least we'll have clarity on our desires. One very interesting thing that Srila Prabhupada says is to desire what is natural is not a desire. He said, just like we're about to go take prasadam, so Prabhupada would say, if you say, I want to eat, nobody will criticize you in saying, what is wrong with you that you want to eat? See, because that desire to eat is natural, Prabhupada said it's actually desirelessness. So Srila Rupa Goswami gives a category of prayer where once one has awakened to one's swarup, one desires to serve the Lord in that way. That is desirelessness. We were talking about these devotees who had desires apparently contrary to that of the Lord, but actually those were not personal desires because they were desiring what was natural. So we should trust that Krishna knows what he's doing. His desires are perfect for everything. All of his desires will be achieved. And we should find our happiness in being aligned, being the instrument of those desires, even if apparently what we get externally isn't so pleasing to our senses. Ultimately, we are not our senses, and we can achieve real happiness within. Whether or not our senses are pleased, we can achieve our real happiness within by trusting that Krishna has these amoga sankalpa, which he fulfills by his own power, and that I can align myself with him. So I think we're out of time, and I know we're out of time because people are already leaving. But we could take maybe one question or two questions. Yes?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Sometimes we might have a desire which is spiritual, but too good to be fulfilled. Let's say.
Too what to be fulfilled?
Too good.
Too good to be fulfilled?
Like
How can your spiritual desire be too good to be fulfilled?
I want to read Krishna books so many times that I end up memorizing it. I want to memorize all 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita.
Prahladananda Swami's memorized Krishna book. Go for it.
Yeah, so just wanted to check, is that okay?
Sure. Make sure you get enough sleep. And depends on, what kind of brain you have. Like, I'll never forget, we were at a festival. We're all sitting down for prasadam, and Prahladananda Swami said, would you all like to hear a chapter of Krishna book? And we're like, sure. And he just recites it. And I've read and heard Krishna book enough that I knew he was reciting it perfectly. He's also memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita. So, sure, go for it. Don't neglect the other parts of your life, though. I had one godbrother who saw Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and he saw Prabhupada, and he just starts reciting all these verses. Comes in front of Prabhupada and just starts reciting all these verses. Prabhupada didn't even look at him. There was another devotee in the room, and Prabhupada looked at that devotee and said, give him something practical to do. So make sure you also do something for the mission. I was talking to a devotee recently. He said, I have enough money saved up now. I could quit my job. He's only like in his 30s, right? His kids are young. He said, I could just quit my job and just go someplace where I could just hear and chant. I said, that's for like when you're 85. I said, it's actually selfish that you're thinking, I just want to situate myself where I can just study and chant all day long. I said, do something for the mission. I said, yes, you should have time for hearing and chanting, and if you can do more of that than you're doing now, that's great. But do something for the mission. I said, do something for Prabhupada. Prabhupada wanted us to be active, to do something for him. And he said that just changed his whole perspective. He did retire, but he ended up going to a different place where now it looks like he's going to start a whole Krishna conscious community. And I said, so how is your sadhana? He said, it's the best it's ever been. I said, yes, when you focused on, what am I going to do to please Krishna? Yes, Prabhu, this last one, yes.
Yeah. By the way, we think he's got the brain for it.
You think he's got the brain for it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, then go for it. I should just say, I know one devotee, Charna Renu. She's a disciple of Devi Mritya Swami. She got her PhD in astrophysics. And what she did when she was, any of you who have masters or PhDs, it's very intensive. So she had a recording of Dravida Prabhu reading the Bhagavad Gita. He reads, everything, like the verses and the purports. And she would listen to that every spare minute she got, like she said when she was walking on campus. And so she said after a while she memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita by hearing that. I know a devotee who had a job as a driver, and he would play an audiobook of Chaitanya Charitamrita while he was driving, and after a few years he memorized the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there you go. Yes.
So some modern day jivas reckon they have it all figured out. So in terms of getting what they want, getting their desires.
I don't think it's just modern day jivas. I think Hiranyakashipu thought he had it all figured out too.
But I'm talking about the buzzword. The buzzword currently is attraction or law of attraction.
Or manifesting, yes.
Yes.
They're going to manifest whatever they want.
So I think, they understand that the Atma is, or matter is subservient to Atma. So they try to exploit this thing.
Yeah, well, so they're trying to get a mystic power.
Yes. So do you have anything to say about it? If you could just accommodate this for a minute.
Okay, so what do we do with the current trend about manifesting and attracting? So they're looking at an actual subtle fact of the universe, that we attract what we desire. That's a fact. But you have to work for it. You have to do some karma to get it. At least you have to do subtle karma. At least you have to do some kind of austerities or something to get it. So the only thing that's free is bhakti. Well, there is a price. You have to give up your false ego and you have to really want bhakti intensely enough to give up your false ego. There is that price. But there really isn't any other price for bhakti. You can't gain bhakti through austerities or mental manipulations or that's, right? Bhakti mam avijananti yavanyas chatmi tatvatat tato pachacheya mam samayukta tamo mataha. So, yeah, I mean, people, this is not modern day jivas. From the beginning of time, there have been jivas who realized that if I try to achieve results through subtle means rather than through gross means, I'll probably be more effective. That's been going on from the beginning of the universe. People trying to achieve mystic power. Now, you have to just know, if you do that kind of an austerity, generally it starts with yam niyam. So if you don't lead a pure life, if you're leading a life very much in Rajas and Tamas, first of all, you're going to have the same problem as everybody else. You're not going to know what to desire. So we had demons like Vrikasura. He thought he wanted to desire, he thought what he wanted was the ability to kill people, right? By touching their head. It ended up killing him. So a lot of these manifesting, attracting people, if they're in Rajas and Tamas, they're going to end up just as frustrated as the people, working 9-to-5 jobs. And they're going to have to do some austerity, at least on the subtle platform. And even if they're in Sattva-gun is also ultimately frustrating. And most of the people playing with this stuff are not qualified to do it, and they won't really achieve much. They're to be wasting their time. Most of these people are wasting their time. And then they're just told, oh, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it right. But it's an old, it's not just modern. That, figure out how to be in touch with the universe. In the 11th canto, Krishna talks about if you're in touch with the universe, you can get all the mystic powers. So that's been around from the beginning of the creation. So devotees are not so interested in these things. We're not interested in these things on a gross or subtle level. Is that all right? Yeah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.